And we are live here on PlusOneExp's Roll for Content channel. My name is Tony Vasinda. I'm Chief Alchemist here at PlusOneExp. And this is the second part of our Black Friday funeral party extravaganza. We had our regular funeral party, and now it's time for a zoo party. We are playing Zed Two Noughts. We're a weird little brand that multi-classes in tabletop game design, beard, and skincare alchemy in the Bardic College of Content Creation. Our hope and desire is to help amazing designers find great players who love their games and help amazing players find great designers whose games they can love. We do that in a ton of different ways, but hands down, my favorite way to do it is to sit down and actually play those games with the designers. Today we've got Josh from the design team that put together Zed Two Noughts. Josh, tell people a little bit about what this adventure module is all about.
So Zed Two Noughts, it's a funnel adventure, and that should be obvious at this point, but the idea is that each player is controlling somewhere between 3 to 5 player characters, depending on group size. If you have a larger group, like let's say 6 players, it's probably better to go on the lower side, and vice versa. We've also included basic character creation mechanics that sort of takes up one page and works in conjunction with Old School Essentials or your favorite basic expert rule set. Now, Zed Two Noughts. You've been spending your life, your young or young adult life, at this point, in and around this pleasant village. Approximately 300 to 500 people, enough to have a thriving arts community, as well as the outliers to provide the basic goods and services. Now, each of you has done an apprenticeship under a given master, but you're out and you're ready to start breaking out on your own. Now, within this village, it's getting to be the end of what was previously a very pleasant day. It's starting to reach into fall. The weather's getting a little bit colder. People are starting up preparations of their crops to make sure that they've got enough for the winter and so on and so forth. But you've chosen to retire on this day as the sun is starting to set, and you return to whatever home, tent, or hole in the ground that you call home. Now, just as you're beginning to settle in, whatever your nightly routine is, by whatever candle or lantern light you happen to have, you hear noises. This vast sound of destruction, these explosions that sort of rake out into the night, breaking that nice peaceful murmur of the village, descending it into screams and chaos. As you quickly run out of your given abode, you find fires raging, buildings toppling, and townsfolk that you have known and grown up next to running in every direction. In the air above lies a strange craft, this sort of blackened disc, and at the bottom these like thick pink and red tentacles that kind of coalesce in a maw, sort of reaching out, worming their way through the village. You watch as you look into the air as screaming a villager is pulled from the ground up and pulled into the confines of this craft that lies ahead. And then you see it, the tentacle, heading in your direction. Now you have but a moment to grab something, anything that will help you in this venture. But first I need your groups as a collective to make a dexterity check to see if you have time to even grab this thing that might be even lying next to you before the tentacles descend and grab you.
That is a 15, not under 8.
That is not under 8.
Of course,
That's
under the math I learned in Texas, so that may be wrong.
That may be the highest Richard has ever rolled on stream.
So Brock's crew is sort of desperately searching for anything that might help them in this moment of need when these tentacles, thick pink vines, living vines, sort of descend around them, yanking them off the ground, pulling them to parts unknown. Now, despite the fact that you did have a moment, and even babies swatting away the tentacles, they soon descend upon all of you again wrapping up, sort of immobilizing. And even as the punch and stab, you might pierce some of the flesh, but it is not enough to let you go as you're sort of reeled back into the maw of this construct that lies floating above your village. You are swinging wildly, but you get just enough of a view to see the continued screams and yells of your fellow villagers, as well as the fires that have started raging, and the steeple of the church that has fallen down and crashed upon the ground. Now, as you're reeled up into the sky, soon you're sort of pulled through these slimy, circular tunnels, and that feeling of claustrophobia sort of sets in as you're in the darkness of this fleshy tube that these tentacles are starting to drag you through. But after a moment, light appears once more, and with a thud, you land on the floor. Now, the first thing you notice, the floors themselves. They're warm, they're metallic. And as you glance up and look around you, you see the floor littered with confused townsfolk, namely those who we will be playing with. Again, they all look familiar in some form to you. Whether you've interacted with them directly or have seen them from afar in the village, you do recognize these individuals as being fellow villagers, all having been deposited now in this one room. Now, the room itself it's fairly spacious. Think 50 to 100 feet circumference diameter. However, this is unlike any room you've ever been in. Like I said, while the floors were warm and metallic, the walls are fleshy. Protruding from them are planks that look sort of like bunks, but they're sort of this fleshy scab-like material. As you look up, the ceiling squirms overhead, and these bulbs of glass are emitting a sterile form of light that is just sort of emanating across this whole room here. Now, surrounding the room, in sort of a clock-like, sort of like the numbers on the clock, are these bowls that are sitting on stalks that are rising up 2-3 feet from the ground. And then, to the north, along the wall, breaking from the flesh and pulsating of the wall itself, is a heavy metal door. Now, as you sort of collect your bearings, look around you, what do you guys do?
So Trinket immediately yells, "Buttercream Gang, rise up," which is her call to action to tell them to help people around them. And she starts going to help some of the other townsfolk up. The other three look like they're doing the exact same, but are absolutely trying to pickpocket everybody they can as they help them up.
I think Marin looks at Wyatt and makes the only professional astrologer joke that's appropriate to this sort of situation, which is, well, I didn't see this one coming.
Yeah.
So I think man, I wish we had grabbed something on our way up. At least the vodka or something.
The swab squad just kind of laughs. Baby has the bright idea that if we're gonna get out of here, we're gonna have to go through this door, or we're gonna have to go through one of these bowls. And he picks up Avon. And he holds Avon beat up. And he slowly lowers Avon into one of those bowls. And Avon's squirming "No way, no way!" Baby's I've had enough. I've had enough of you. I've had enough of you people.
Okay, so Baby lowers Avon into this bowl, and then you can kind of see as the orifice at the bottom starts to expand as you're shoving Avon's head into it, and eventually you can see it kind of seize around it and start the suction pull as Avon slowly disappears down the tube of this bowl-like structure. You can kind of hear them yelling and screaming as they're pushed through this muscular system-like tube until there is no sound.
Oh, the sound stopped.
Marin will do the astrology flex and then pop his knuckles and then head over to examine the two levers.
Okay. So you walk over to the panel, and each of these metal sort of bars is extending out of this cutout. You see there's flesh walls, little metal like panel, and then slots. 3 in a row. The one on the left and the right, again, they have these like metal bars that sort of sticking up and they're in an upright position. The one in the center looks like it had a bar at one point, but as you kind of peer into the gap left in its absence, you see that whatever metal was there had been sort of snapped off at one point, leaving just like the base end of the shaft sort of shoved down into the mechanism.
The one who is pulling on this is Slips, using the rubberized hose of the milking device.
Slips, okay. So, Slips, you're pulling this middle lever now is the makeshift one for the torch and the flesh and all that stuff. So you pull it down. It's a little harder this time than what you would see in the previous one, but it sort of slots down, and then again it sort of kicks itself back up on its own mechanism. You see red bulb glow again. Another bzzz of lightning. This time at Slips. Now, logic says you were using the rubber tube, but you were only using that to hold the
That's true. I don't know where the lightning came from. I'm just saying,
Yeah.
that's...
So the lightning juts out of that bulb, and you're standing on metal floor. You're very grounded. The Slips have more than a single hit point.
No, absolutely not. Slips has 1 hit point.
All right, so save versus death for me. I don't think it's gonna matter, but
I did not.
okay. So another jolt of lightning. This time hitting into Slips, who's standing at the center, having just pulled that. This bolt kind of like courses through their body, travels down again, grounds into the floor. They stand for a moment, and then, bam, hit the ground, a smoking corpse. Metal, rubber, sort of clattering onto the ground next to them.
Cool.
Livingston immediately yells out, "Not Slips! He was my favorite!"
Paul leans over and looks like he's about to gently caress Slips, but then just starts patting down his body and removing all of his possessions.
Does Ren have more than a single hit point?
Ren has 1 hit point left.
Ren has 1 hit point. All right, so that's not even going to save you if you make the death save.
No, well, they've got 1 hit point left.
Oh, 1 hit point left. Okay.
They ate that first hit point, unless they're taking like a D8 damage.
Well, the bolt of electricity does more than 1, but
Oh shit! Okay, yeah.
So that's why you need to save to see if you only take 1.
yeah.
Oh, okay. No, that's a 4.
All right, let's see how much that does. Oh, that is 4 points of damage of electricity damage. As it jolts through Ren. Again, bolt coming from above the door, goes through them. They sort of jolt from the electricity before falling to the ground, smoking just like Slips.
Marin just looks at the cards. It's just like, they're being really literal tonight.
And now the bulb, that red bulb that was sitting above the door, you see the light within it start to emanate, and it turns green. And you hear the as the steel door begins to move up as the body of one of the villagers is hucked at where the bulb was.
It just goes short and flies out through the door.
That's the door.
Like, Slips' head hits the bulb, and then the body doesn't quite make it, so the momentum just flips it forward through the doorway.
And you
It's
hear
like-
the solid thud of the body as it lands in the hallway.
It's like throwing a mannequin down a hallway. Yeah. Like,
That's all is it.
At a quick glance, you see a forest. You see wheat stalks. You see a mostly empty chamber with what appears to be a person on the inside. You see water. A mountainscape. And then the confines will look like to be a small home. But all you get is a quick glance before, on your left, the very first of these panes of glass rise up. You hear a noise. This thump. This meat against glass flesh sound as it pounds into it. As you quickly look, you see the source. Sitting at the glass is a strange shape. It looks like a pair of ape-like creatures, one black, one white, sewn together back to back in perfect symmetry. And as you watch, you stare them down. As you've exited this room, you're looking down at that far end of glass. Farthest one to your left, you see them. In a fit of rage, they're sort of pulling themselves, they're trying to separate the seams that connect them to each other, but they're also pounding at the glass in front of them. That's when you see another BOOM as they hit again. And you hear the and you see the spider web crack of the glass itself.
Do we see any ways to run? Like open doorways or...
So there are those 6 panes of glass, and then all the way to the east, to your right-hand side, you look and there's a doorway at the end of the hall that you are currently residing in.
Let's run towards it.
Yeah, I think this is bolt towards the door time.
Baby picks Sammy up by the scruff of her Smurf outfit, and I was like, "Come on, little sister!" And like as quickly as possible, walking down, getting down there, away from the weird ape things.
Okay, so as you begin, you kind of collectively look at each other, do the Scooby-Doo, and then turn to run. You hear one final BOW as the creature hits the glass for a third time, followed by the shattering and tinkle of glass as it hits the ground. As you continue, you turn to kind of look to see. It is silent for a moment after the glass sort of settles before you hear the collective roar of the 2 ape creatures as they burst forward from their cage into the hallway. They sort of slam into the wall on the far side. Now you guys are a little more than halfway down the hall. I need you to roll initiative. That feeling of claustrophobia sort of sets in as like you're in the darkness of this fleshy tube that these fleshy scab like the flesh and
Fleshy pedestals with like orbs.
same fleshy material used, but it's fleshy material. It's sort of hard.
Is
Can
that
I see anything?
A fleshy tube that goes down.
Okay.
how dispersed are the fleshy planks or the scabby planks?
Flesh.
It's not the flesh of everything else. So when this spongy like flesh material, it's sort of like you have the flesh on both sides and
Where the fleshy,
a bit of flesh wall
fleshy.
made of flesh. The fleshy bit of bowl, and see there's flesh walls.
Set the flesh on fire and cut.
The flesh getting the flesh and in the flesh, burnt flesh and flesh.
Cool.
And it's a similar one from the torch and the flesh. And it's sort of flush with the flesh, and the smell of like burnt flesh is sort of bits of flesh that have flesh sound as a fleshy wall. Again, that thick sheet of glass wall of flesh.